Left to die in the cold dust, the battle had ended, but the silence that followed was even more terrifying. Smoke covered the sky, and broken machines lay scattered across the ground like dead animals. Bodies, alien and human, were frozen in place, forgotten by their leaders. Among the wreckage, a single alien woman crawled through the dust, her breathing slow, her body shaking. Her name was Thari. Once, she had been a proud warrior of her people, a fighter trained from birth. But now, her armor was cracked, her weapons lost, and her body covered in wounds. Her right leg wouldn't move, and every breath she took burned like fire in her chest. The cold wind cut through her skin as if it wanted to finish what the enemy had started. Thari dragged herself toward a dark hole between the rocks. It wasn't shelter, not really, but it was something. She had no hope left. Her people had retreated, leaving her behind. The humans had stopped firing, but she knew they wouldn't come to rescue her. To them, she was just another alien body in the dirt. She pulled herself into the cave and collapsed on the floor. Her heart pounded slowly, and her eyelids grew heavier. There was no one left to fight for, no one left to fight with. Her fingers dug into the ground one last time before she let out a whisper only the wind could hear. Let it end. She closed her eyes, expecting nothing but the slow arrival of death. But something strange happened. Time passed. She didn't know how much. Maybe hours, maybe more. She floated in darkness. She dreamed of her home, of her sister's laughter, of the days before the war. But then something pulled her back. A scent, not smoke, not death, something. Warm. She was still alive. She felt warmth on her skin, heat surrounding her body. Not fire blankets. Her eyes blinked open, slowly, painfully. She expected to see the afterlife. But what she saw was a roof made of wood. A ceiling, lights, a room dot, and then someone. A human male sitting near her, his eyes watching carefully, not with hate, not with fear, but calm and care. Thari's body reacted before her mind did. She tried to sit up, but pain stabbed through her ribs. She groaned, and the man quickly moved forward, his hands raised in peace. He said something soft words in a language she couldn't understand, but his voice was calm. His face was not cruel. She blinked again, confused. Why was she alive? Why had this human not killed her? Why was she warm, covered, and safe? Her eyes scanned the room. It was small, simple. No weapons, no soldiers, only one human. She saw bandages on her arms. Her wounds were cleaned. Her body no longer bled. Her skin no longer froze. He had saved her. She remembered crawling into the cave, waiting to die. Had he found her there? Had he carried her all this way? But why? Her mind told her to be careful. Humans couldn't be trusted. She had been trained to kill them, to hate them. They had destroyed her world, her people, her future. But this man, he was different. He brought her water. She didn't want to accept it, but her body needed it. Her hand shook as she lifted the cup to her lips. He didn't stop her. He just watched, quiet, gentle. She looked into his eyes, searching for the trick, the trap, the hidden danger, but she saw only tiredness and kindness. I felt something strange inside her chest. A deep confusion, a tiny warmth, not from the fire, not from the blankets. From somewhere deeper. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Even if she knew his language, her voice was too weak. But something had changed. She wasn't dead. She had closed her eyes, ready to leave this world. But now her eyes were open, and she was in a human's home. Why? The question stayed in her mind like a whisper. Who was this man? Why had he helped her? Her people had left her. The war had left her. Even death had passed her by. Only this one human had not. And now Her second life had just begun. Asterisk, the human who saved her didn't trust easily. She was a warrior trained to survive, trained to fight, and above all, trained to never rely on anyone, especially not a human. But as the pain in her body faded and the warmth in her bones returned, she couldn't deny one truth. She was alive because of him. The man never asked her name. He didn't touch her unless he needed to change her bandages. He spoke in a quiet voice, using soft words she didn't understand, but she watched him closely. Every movement he made was careful. Every look he gave her was without judgment. No fear, no anger. Only something she couldn't explain, like he had already seen too much pain to add more to anyone else's. On the third day, he brought her food again. It was strange and plain, but it filled her empty stomach. He sat near the corner of the room and peeled a fruit, then looked at her with a gentle smile. Thari didn't smile back. But something inside her softened. She had been ready to die in the dirt. Instead, she was being fed. By a human. She watched him build a small fire in the stone pit. His hands were skilled, quiet, steady. He didn't ask for thanks. He didn't act like a hero. He didn't even ask her why she was there. And somehow, that made it easier to breathe. She remembered when her own commanders would scream orders, never caring about pain or fear. She remembered the cold ships and metal floors where sleep never came easy. Now she was in a wooden room, on a soft bed, and someone had lit a fire just to keep her warm. She wanted to ask his name. But even if she spoke, would he understand her? Still, he spoke to her sometimes short words, careful and slow. He would point to things and say their names. Water, blanket, fire. She didn't repeat them. Not at first, but she listened. Every day she understood a little more. He pointed to himself one day and said, "Jace." Thari stared. He tapped his chest again. "Jace," he said slowly. She didn't respond right away. But as he left the room to give her space, she whispered the name to herself. Jace, the man who saved her. Later that night she couldn't sleep. Not because of pain, but because of confusion. Why would a human help an enemy? Why would someone take a half-dead alien woman into his home, clean her wounds, and sit beside her fire after everyone else had left her to die? She turned and looked at him as he dozed in the chair near the door, a rifle across his lap. Not pointed at her. Just there for protection. Maybe not from her. Maybe from whatever else was out there. She didn't feel afraid anymore. But she did feel something new, something unfamiliar. Not love, not yet, but something that hurt less than hate. Something that lived quietly between gratitude and trust. Jace didn't talk about the war. He didn't mention which side he fought on. He didn't wear a uniform. He didn't ask her about her past. Maybe he had one just as broken. Maybe that's why he didn't look at her like the others did. One morning, she woke to find a small plant near her bed. It was placed in a cup, green leaves stretching toward the light. He didn't explain it. He just left it there. It was the first living thing besides him she had seen in weeks. That day, she moved her fingers over her chest and felt the scars. So many battles, so many losses. But this this was different. This wasn't a battlefield. This was a place where she was healing. She still didn't know why, but she knew this Jace had no reason to save her. And yet, he did. He gave her warmth without asking anything in return. He gave her food when she couldn't even thank him. He gave her peace when all she had known was war. She didn't say it out loud, but in her mind, the words were clear. Human saved me, and I don't even know why. Hunted by both worlds, the silence outside the cabin had a different sound now. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence before something terrible. Thari could feel it in her bones, just like she'd felt danger in 1,000 battlefields. Something was watching. Something was coming. Jace knew it too. He had been more alert for days, checking a scanner device every few hours, standing quietly by the window for long stretches of time. He didn't say much, but Thari noticed how his jaw stayed tight and his fingers hovered close to the old rifle he kept near. He was waiting for something. Or someone. One evening, while Jace was outside gathering wood, Thari crawled out of bed and limped to the scanner. The screen flashed with soft blips, moving dots, some close, some far. She didn't understand the tech, but the red ones, they were new. And they were getting closer. When Jace returned, she pointed at the screen. Her voice was still weak, but she managed one word. Hunters? He looked at her, surprised she had spoken. Then, slowly, he nodded. Maybe. Could be patrols, he said. Could be worse. Thari's heart pounded. She knew what worse meant. There were groups, mercenaries, bounty hunters, scavengers that didn't care about sides. They hunted anyone valuable. And she, a rare alien warrior, was worth more than most. Jace sat beside the scanner that night, watching it like a man guarding a flame in the dark. He didn't sleep. Neither did she. Next morning, he handed her a small device. Signal scrambler, he said. They're tracking biosignatures. This might help. If we're lucky. She took it and stared at him. There was no fear in his eyes, just quiet urgency. He wasn't protecting her because he had to. He was doing it because he wanted to. That confused her even more. She had killed humans before. Good ones. Cruel ones. Young ones. That was war. And now, one of their kind was standing between her and death. By the third day, she felt strong enough to walk. Jace had helped her train slowly, step by step, using old furniture as support. He even tied cloth around her ribs to ease the pain. He never asked why she fought. He never blamed her. He didn't ask for her story. But Thari knew hers wasn't the only life marked by war. One night, she found him staring at a picture, faded, cracked, and hidden inside a metal box. 2 smiling faces. A woman and a child. Human. Gone, most likely. Killed. Maybe during a bombing. Maybe during the invasion. She didn't ask. He didn't offer. But she saw the way he folded the picture like a piece of his heart. They were both hunted, not just her. Jace had betrayed his own people by helping her. That made him a target too. He was a ghost, living in the cracks of a broken planet. He had no flag, no allies, and no place to return to, just like her. That's when she realized something sharp and painful. They weren't just hiding from the same enemies. They were hiding from the same world. And now, that world was closing. Jace packed bags quietly. He gathered supplies without saying goodbye to the house. It was clear he had done this before. He handed her a knife, not just for defense, but as a message. You're not a prisoner here, he said slowly. If you want to go alone, I won't stop you. She held the blade in her hand. It was light, cold, familiar, but when she looked at Jace, she knew she wouldn't leave him. He had saved her without a reason. She wouldn't walk away without one. So she slid the knife into her belt and said her first full human word since she arrived. Stay. Jace nodded. No smile. Just respect. Outside, the trackers were getting closer. The war hadn't ended. But maybe she had found someone worth fighting for again. The warrior begins to heal for the first time in years. Thari felt the weight of her armor without actually wearing it. Not the metal plates, not the sharp edges, but the invisible armor, the one made of pain, silence, and survival. The one she had built around her soul. That armor had kept her alive. But here, in the quiet with Jace, it was beginning to crack. They had moved deeper into the wild hills, away from the eyes and the sky. The small home was gone. Now it was just a hidden cave near a waterfall where the water whispered instead of screamed. Jace set up camp like he had done it 100 times. He didn't speak much, but every action was full of care, measured, thoughtful, and quiet. Thari tried to help, but her body still protested. Her ribs hurt with every breath, and her muscles had grown weak. Yet each step she took beside him made her feel more human, more alive. She sat by the fire that night, watching the flames dance. She had never looked at fire this way before. On the battlefield, it meant death. Here, it meant warmth. It meant light in the dark. She held her hands near it and let herself feel something she had forgotten. Comfort.jse. He passed her a cup of hot broth. She accepted it without hesitation this time. Their eyes met. No words needed. Later, as the fire crackled and the sky turned silver with stars, she asked a question in broken English. "Why help me?" Jace didn't answer right away. He looked up at the sky, then back at her. "Because once, someone helped me," he said softly, "and I didn't forget." That night, Thari dreamed not of war, but of laughter. A voice she had not heard in years. Her sister's. The sound had been buried deep under years of pain, but now it came back like sunlight through a crack in a wall. She woke with tears on her cheeks. Not from fear, but from something else. Something older. Something real. The next morning, Jace handed her a stick and pointed to a small patch of flat earth. She was confused until he mimicked a fighting stance. Then she understood. He wanted her to train. Not because he saw her as a weapon, but because he believed she could stand again, fight again, live again. She limped at first, awkward and slow. But her body remembered the moves. It hurt, but it also felt good. She wasn't helpless. She wasn't broken. She was healing. Every day, she trained a little longer. Every day, Jace brought her water, helped her stretch, and even sparred with her lightly. And every night, they sat together by the fire, sharing silence that didn't feel empty anymore. He taught her words: walk, breathe, safe. She said them slowly, repeating them until her voice grew stronger. Then one day, he pointed to her and asked, "Name?" She hesitated. She hadn't spoken her name in months. Not since her unit was wiped out. Not since she was left behind like a forgotten weapon. She placed a hand on her chest. "Thari," she said. Jace repeated it. Not perfectly, but gently. That sound, her name in another's voice, made her feel real again. Later that evening, while collecting water, she caught a glimpse of herself in a pool. Her reflection startled her. Her face had changed. The war was still there in the eyes, the scars, but so was something new. Hope. She wasn't sure what this was between them. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something precious. Something she hadn't dared to feel, and one moment stayed with her. That night, when the wind grew cold and the fire was low, Jace placed his blanket over her without saying a word. She wanted to give it back, but she didn't. She let it stay because for the first time, she wanted to be warm. The fire and the trap. The fire was small that night, but its glow was enough to chase the cold from their bones. Thari sat quietly, sharpening the edge of her blade while Jace checked the motion sensor buried just outside the cave. Their new shelter was well hidden, tucked into cliffs and vines, but both of them knew that hiding couldn't last forever. They had been safe for 16 days. 16 days without sirens, without bullets, without blood. 16 days of quiet, meals, of slow healing, of unspoken connection. But peace, for people like them, was a fragile thing. That night, Thari heard a sound she hadn't heard in weeks, the low hum of a distant hovercraft. It was faint, nearly swallowed by the wind. But to a warrior like her, it was as clear as a scream. She stood fast, her instincts kicking in like fire through her nerves. Jace met her eyes, already armed. Neither needed to speak. Something or someone had found them. They didn't run. Not yet. They had prepared for this. Escape bags were packed, weapons hidden, exit routes marked. Jace flicked a switch on the sensor board, and red dots began to cluster on the screen. Too many. This isn't a patrol, Jace muttered. It's a sweep team. Thari's pulse quickened. Her kind? Humans? Or worse, independent hunters, the ones who sold survivors. To the highest bidder? A message crackled over a distant comm. Not English. Not her tongue. Something neutral. Mercenary code. She stepped toward Jace. They know someone is here. They're circling. He nodded. Then we make it count. They didn't have much time. The plan was simple. One stays behind to distract the hunters while the other escapes through the hidden exit tunnel. Jace didn't argue. He began preparing the charges, planning to stay behind. But Thari stopped him. No, she said. Firmly. They want me. He shook his head. They'll kill you. I was already dead once, she replied, her voice calm. Let me return the fire you gave me. He looked at her for a long moment, then gave her the small transmitter. If you're not back in an hour, I come after you. She said nothing, but her grip tightened on the blade. Outside, the forest lit up with green beams. Shadows moved fast, disciplined, armed. Thari moved quicker. Her body still ached, but adrenaline wiped away the pain. She was no longer the broken woman crawling in the dirt. She was a warrior reborn in fire and kindness. She leaped from the rocks and struck before they saw her. Two dropped in silence. Another screamed, and a shot rang out through the trees. The hunters turned. She ran not away, but toward them, leading them further from Jace's hiding spot. A trap. She was the bait. They chased her through the dark, shouting, firing, cornering her by a cliff. And just when they thought they had her, she stepped back and vanished into a crack in the rock wall she'd memorized days ago. They followed. Inside the narrow tunnel, she planted a charge. When the explosion echoed through the mountains, the chase ended in fire. She crawled back through a second exit, lungs burning, shoulder bleeding, but alive. And when she stumbled into the clearing behind the waterfall, Jace was there. He caught her before she fell. Neither spoke. But in that silent, breathless moment, something was finally clear between them. She hadn't run away, and neither had he. They were no longer hiding. They were choosing each other. Asterisk. What it means to be free. The fire crackled softly as Thari sat beside it, her arm wrapped in fresh bandages. Smoke rose into the cold night sky, curling like a question neither of them could answer. She was alive again. Barely. Her body had taken more damage, but her soul was changing. Jace poured warm water into a metal cup and handed it to her. She accepted it without hesitation now. Her hands didn't shake. Her eyes didn't dart toward the exit. For the first time, she wasn't planning her escape. She was choosing to stay. They didn't speak much in the days that followed. They didn't have to. In the quiet moments, trust grew like roots beneath the surface. Jace didn't ask for her story. He didn't demand explanations. He only did what he'd done from the start, showed up quietly, without expectations. Thari began to walk without pain. The limp had faded. Her scars had sealed. She still trained every morning, still kept her weapons sharp. But it wasn't for survival anymore. It was something deeper, a promise to herself. She wasn't just fighting death anymore. She was preparing for life. She watched Jace fix the small solar panel on the roof. She listened to him hum Old Earth, songs he probably didn't even remember the words to. She caught herself smiling without knowing why. Then one night, he asked her something she didn't expect. What do you want? The question hit harder than any blade. She had never been asked that. Her whole life, others had chosen for her commanders, councils, warlords. She had fought because she was told to. She had obeyed orders. She had killed to survive, but no one had ever asked what she wanted. She didn't answer that night. Instead, she walked to the edge of the cliff and looked out over the valley. The stars were so clear here, untouched by war. So many lights, but none as confusing as the one growing inside her. The next day, she found Jace asleep near the fire, a book on his chest. She stared at his face, peaceful, calm, human. And in that moment, the answer came. "I want to be more than a weapon," she said softly. "I want to breathe." He opened his eyes slowly and smiled. "You already are." That morning they found the abandoned shuttle. It was hidden in a hangar deep in the forest, overgrown and forgotten. Jace had heard rumors of it years ago. They spent days cleaning it, checking fuel levels, running diagnostics. It wasn't built for long travel, but it could reach the outer colonies. It could give them a chance. A chance at what? They weren't sure, but it was the first time in years that Thari looked at the sky and saw more than just danger. She saw direction. Jace pulled out a worn map and spread it across the table inside the shuttle. "There's a neutral moon," he said. "No patrols, no politics. Just quiet." Thari placed her hand over the map. "Then that's where we go." He hesitated. "If we go, there's no turning back. You'll be hunted. I'll be hunted." She nodded. "I already was." As they loaded the last of their supplies into the shuttle, Jace handed her something, an old dog tag. It had his name and a number. He looked at her, uncertain. "I thought I'd buried this life," he said. "But maybe. It can still mean something." She took it, placed it around her neck, and whispered, "Now it does." They didn't take much, just food, water, weapons, memories, and something else. Hope. As the engines warmed and the dust began to rise, Thari sat beside Jace in the cockpit. Her hand rushed against his. He didn't pull away. They had both been prisoners once, of war, of pain, of silence. But now they were choosing something no one ever gave them. Freedom. And for the first time in her life, Thari breathed not to survive, but to begin again. The warrior's second life. Stars no longer looked like reminders of war. They looked like possibilities. As the shuttle cut through the atmosphere and climbed higher, Thari sat still, her eyes locked on the dark sky ahead. Her breathing was steady, her mind sharp, but for the first time in years, her heart was not bracing for battle. It was bracing for something far more unfamiliar. Peace. Beside her, Jace adjusted the flight controls. His hand moved with calm confidence, like a man who had nothing left to run from. The silence between them wasn't cold. It was warm now, like a fire with no need for words. Thari looked down one last time at the land they had left behind, jagged cliffs, broken forests, scorched fields. The world that had buried her once. The world that had almost ended her story. But it hadn't, not completely. She wasn't just escaping that world. She was leaving the version of herself that died in the dirt. They crossed into orbit with no alarms. No sirens, no pursuit. Just the hum of the ship and the stars opening above them like a door left ajar. Hours passed. Jace activated the autopilot, then leaned back in his seat. Thari stood, walked toward the back, and opened a small storage crate. Inside were only a few items: spare rations, old tools, and a folded piece of cloth. Her old armor, bent, scarred, burnt. She stared at it, hands hovering but not touching. That armor had saved her once. It had been her identity, her skin, her shield. But now it felt foreign, heavy, wrong. She closed the crate. She didn't need it anymore. Later, as they sat across from each other in the tiny living cabin of the HFY ship, Jace broke the silence with a quiet question. "What happens when we land?" Thari didn't answer right away. Then slowly she said, "We find a home, not for a warfighter, for a woman, and maybe for something more." He smiled faintly. "You think we can just live?" Her eyes met his, steady and clear. "Yes," she said, "not because the war is over, but because we choose to stop carrying it." She reached for the small plant he had placed near the window, the same kind he had once left by her bedside when she was too broken to stand. It had grown, stretched toward the light dot, so had she. Jay stood and moved beside her, not to lead, not to shield, but to walk with her. She looked at him not as a soldier looking at a comrade, but as a soul looking at another who had faced darkness, and still dared to light a candle dot as the shuttle approached the edge of the colony moon's orbit. Its surface came into view: green fields, calm rivers, small lights blinking in the shadows, a place untouched, a place unclaimed, a place waiting. Jace reached for the controls. Thari placed her hand over his and whispered the words that had stayed inside her for too long. "I closed my eyes to die, but opened them to find you." And for the first time, without fear or pain or walls between them, she smiled, not the smile of a warrior, but the smile of someone who had chosen to live. The shuttle touched down softly. Outside, a breeze waited. Inside, a second life began.